Mercedes is winning, but something inside that garage is starting to break. George Russell was supposed to become the face of the team after Lewis Hamilton left. But before Barcelona, an 18-year-old rookie is not just beating him. He is humiliating the entire idea that Mercedes already had its leader. Kimi Antonelli has turned a simple teammate battle into a championship crisis, and the timing could not be more dangerous. Because this is not happening in a normal week. Mercedes is walking into Barcelona with a massive points lead, an angry paddock watching its engine, a front-wing investigation hanging over its car, and a rule change that could expose whether its early season advantage was real power, or a loophole about to disappear. And right in the middle of it all, Russell is saying the words no top driver wants to admit. Nothing is clicking. That is the warning sign. Not the lost points. Not the bad luck. Not even Antonelli's winning streak. The real warning is that one Mercedes driver looks completely connected to the fastest car on the grid, while the other sounds like he no longer understands it. And if Barcelona proves the car has changed, or the advantage is gone, Mercedes may have to make the choice every great team fears. Protect the driver who was meant to inherit the throne, or follow the teenager who may have already taken it. Subscribe to the channel. At the beginning of the season, Mercedes looked like the one team that had understood the new Formula One before everyone else. The rules had changed. The cars had changed. The engines had changed. Even the way the air moved around the car had changed. For most teams, that kind of reset is terrifying. It wipes away years of knowledge. It makes old strengths less certain. It turns every first practice session into a public exam. But Mercedes did not look scared. Mercedes looked ready. And that is what made the situation so dangerous. Because when a team looks that prepared after a major rule change, the entire paddock starts asking the same uncomfortable question. Did they simply do a better job, or did they find something nobody else understood in time? That question was already following Mercedes before the rivalry between George Russell and Kimi Antonelli became the biggest story in the garage. But inside the team, there was another question. A more personal one. Who was this new Mercedes era actually built around? After Lewis Hamilton left for Ferrari, there was supposed to be a natural answer. George Russell. He had done the waiting. He had lived through the difficult seasons. He had learned how Mercedes works from the inside, not as a visitor, but as a driver carrying the weight of the badge. He knew the meetings. He knew the politics. He knew the pressure of being measured against the most successful driver the team had ever had. So when Hamilton walked away, Russell was not just stepping into a bigger role. He was stepping into an inheritance. And inheritances in Formula One are never comfortable. Because they come with expectation. They come with ghosts. They come with people quietly asking whether the new leader is truly ready, or whether he was only standing close to greatness. That is why the arrival of Kimi Antonelli changed everything. At first, he looked like the perfect future project. Young, fast, protected, dangerous, but not yet threatening. The kind of driver a team can celebrate without admitting the full size of the gamble. Mercedes could sell the story easily. Russell would lead now. Antonelli would learn for later. The present and the future, side by side. Clean, logical, stable. But Formula One does not stay stable for long, especially when the rookie is faster than the story allows. Australia made everything look normal. Russell won. The championship lead was his. The garage could breathe. The plan seemed intact. For one race, Mercedes had the perfect headline. Their experienced driver had taken control of the new era. But then China happened. Antonelli won. And suddenly, the future did not feel distant anymore. Then Japan happened. Antonelli won again. Now it was not a surprise. It was a pattern. And patterns are what scare Formula One teams, because one result can be explained away, but two results start changing behavior. Engineers listen differently. Journalists ask sharper questions. Rivals begin watching body language. And the driver on the other side of the garage starts feeling pressure that is hard to describe unless you have lived inside a team where the comparison is constant. By Miami, Antonelli was already ahead of Russell in the championship. Only by 9 points, yes. But the number was not the real problem. The problem was what those 9 points represented. They said the rookie was not waiting. They said Russell's leadership was not automatic. They said Mercedes might have built a car that answered better to the instincts of an 18-year-old newcomer than to the driver who was supposed to define the team after Hamilton. That is the quiet nightmare. Not being beaten once. Not having a bad weekend. But discovering that the machine you expected to command may be speaking more clearly to someone else. And here is where the pressure becomes psychological. Russell's early setbacks gave him reasons. A compromised qualifying in China. A setup gamble in Japan that did not work. A safety car that arrived at the wrong time. These are real things. In Formula One, weekends can be destroyed by details that look tiny from the outside. One yellow flag. One missed window. One balance choice that makes the car feel heavy in the wrong corner. But bad luck changes shape when your teammate is winning. It stops sounding like misfortune. It starts sounding like explanation. And explanation, repeated too often, begins to feel like weakness. That is unfair. But Formula One is not designed to be fair. It is designed to reveal. Every lap reveals something. Every sector reveals something. Every radio message, every face behind the garage screens, every uncomfortable answer after qualifying, it all adds weight. And Russell could feel that weight growing. When he said he was not feeling too lucky after Suzuka, it was not just a throwaway line. It was the first sign that the story inside his season was starting to slip out of his control. Because once a driver begins talking about luck, people start wondering when he will start talking about confidence. And confidence is the one fuel no team can simply bolt onto the car. Mercedes still looked powerful from the outside. But inside, the balance was already changing. Antonelli did not need to say very much. He did not need to attack Russell in interviews. He did not need to claim leadership. He only had to keep winning. That is the most brutal kind of pressure in Formula One. The silent kind. The kind where the stopwatch speaks louder than the driver ever could. For Toto Wolff, this created the problem every team principal pretends he wants until it becomes real. Two fast drivers. One dominant car. No clear reason to slow either of them down. Publicly, Wolff kept the message calm. Both drivers were free to race. They were off the leash, as long as the gap between the cars remained safe enough. That sounds strong. It sounds fair. It sounds like trust. But it also contains a warning. Because freedom in Formula One is never unlimited. It lasts only until the first contact, the first strategic argument, the first moment one driver feels the team protected the other. And Mercedes knows that better than most. This team has lived through internal pressure before. It has seen how quickly a championship fight can become a private war. It knows that a teammate is not like any other rival. A Ferrari can beat you and you can blame Ferrari. A Red Bull can beat you and you can blame Red Bull. But when the other car wearing the same uniform beats you, there is nowhere to hide. The data is there. The meetings are shared. The equipment is supposed to be equal. The excuse has to fight for oxygen. That is why the Russell and Antonelli rivalry is so dangerous before Barcelona. Because it is not yet a full explosion. It is something more unstable. A garage trying to stay calm while the evidence keeps changing the power structure. Russell began the season as the obvious leader. Antonelli began it as the brilliant risk. But after China, Japan, and Miami, the risk started looking like the solution. And Russell started looking like the man being asked to prove he still owned a role everyone thought already belonged to him. That is a brutal position. Because the moment leadership has to be defended, it is no longer automatic. And once it is no longer automatic, every race becomes a referendum. Barcelona is not just another stop on the calendar. It is the place where all of this starts to tighten. The technical questions around Mercedes are closing in. The paddock is watching. The rule change is arriving. And inside the garage, the comparison between the two drivers has already become too loud to ignore. One driver is trying to reclaim the story. The other is rewriting it faster than Mercedes can explain. And the most uncomfortable part is this. Mercedes may not be falling apart because something has gone wrong. Mercedes may be falling apart because one thing has gone too right, too quickly. Antonelli was supposed to be the future. But before Barcelona, the future has already arrived. And Russell is now fighting not just to beat his teammate, but to stop Mercedes from realizing it may not need to wait for him anymore. And while Russell was fighting to protect his place inside Mercedes, another fight was building around the team itself. This one was not about confidence. It was not about qualifying laps. It was not about who got through a corner cleaner, or who managed the tires better. This was about suspicion. And in Formula One, suspicion can be just as damaging as proof. Before the season had even properly begun, rival manufacturers were already looking at Mercedes and asking a question nobody inside Brackley wanted to hear. How did they get this much right, this quickly? Because the new power unit rules were not small adjustments. They were a reset. The engine side of Formula One had been pushed into a new balance, with far more emphasis on electrical power, and a very different relationship between combustion and energy deployment. For normal fans, that sounds like engineering language. But the simple version is this. The car now had to win in a different way. It was no longer only about how much raw engine power you could make. It was about when you used that power, how efficiently you recovered energy, how stable the car stayed, and how every system worked together under extreme heat. And Mercedes looked like it had understood that puzzle better than almost everyone else. That alone was enough to make rivals uncomfortable. But then came the detail that turned discomfort into anger. Compression ratio. It sounds technical, but it is not hard to understand. Inside the engine, fuel and air are squeezed before the explosion that creates power. The harder and more efficiently that mixture is squeezed, the more performance the engine can potentially produce. The rules placed a limit. 16:1. Measured at normal surrounding temperature. That detail, normal surrounding temperature, became the center of the storm. Because rivals suspected Mercedes may have found a way for the engine to pass the check when cold, but behave differently once it reached racing temperature. Think of it like a pair of shoes that fits perfectly when someone checks them at the door, then stretches once you start running. At the inspection point, everything looks legal. But in the race, you may be getting something extra. That was the fear. The allegation was that advanced materials could expand with heat in a way that changed the effective compression once the engine was fully operating. And if that was true, rivals believed the gain could be huge by Formula One standards. 0.3, maybe 0.4 per lap. That kind of advantage is not a little help. That is the difference between being caught in dirty air and driving away before the other car can even attack. It is the difference between needing the perfect strategy and having the freedom to choose your strategy. It is the difference between a driver looking heroic and a driver simply having a tool nobody else can match. And this is where the Russell and Antonelli rivalry becomes even more complicated. Because if Mercedes had a genuine early season performance edge, then the team's internal comparison became sharper, not softer. The car was fast enough to win. The opportunity was there. So every weekend became a test of who could take full advantage of it. And Antonelli was taking advantage of it. Russell was not, at least not consistently enough. That is what made the pressure feel so cruel. When a car is bad, both drivers can hide inside the same struggle. When a car is dominant, there is nowhere to hide. The paddock was not just watching Mercedes win. It was watching which Mercedes driver looked most natural while winning. And the answer was becoming uncomfortable. Rival teams pushed the issue. Ferrari, Audi, and Honda raised concerns with the governing body. The governing body held urgent meetings with manufacturers. And Mercedes suddenly found itself defending more than results. It had to defend the legitimacy of its advantage. Toto Wolff did not respond like a man trying to disappear from the controversy. He came out fighting. His message was aggressive, almost mocking, making it clear that Mercedes believed the accusations were nonsense. That kind of public response can do two things at once. It can show strength, and it can reveal just how serious the pressure has become. Because in Formula One, teams rarely attack loudly unless the politics behind the scenes are already intense. Then came the compromise. From June 1, 2026, compression ratio checks would not only happen at normal surrounding temperature. They would also happen at 130 degrees Celsius. In other words, the engine would be judged closer to the conditions it actually faces when racing. That sounds like a small regulatory detail. It is not. It is the door to Barcelona. Because Barcelona arrives exactly when the rule changes the meaning of Mercedes' advantage. For the first part of the season, any benefit connected to heat behavior may have existed inside the old measurement system. After June 1, that same area becomes much harder to protect. So Barcelona is not just a race weekend. It is the first public answer to a question that has been following Mercedes since before the season started. Were they truly ahead? Or were they ahead because the rules had not yet caught up? And there is something even more dangerous. If Mercedes suddenly looks weaker, every early victory becomes politically heavier. Rivals will say they were right to complain. Fans will start asking what changed. And inside Mercedes, the driver battle will become impossible to separate from the technical story.